It's that time again, Our Town Live, where friends, family, people you know, and others you'd rather not know share with us their unique bits of wisdom. And now, here's Herb, your host, for another show.
For you that have pet dogs, I have a rare treat for you today, Debbie Dawson. Debbie's been a successful pet sitter and trainer for the last 20 years. The most important takeaway she has learned over this time has been that many of the dogs she has trained and taken care of, especially the rescues, need extra attention. She realized that many are frightened and do not trust easily, so Debbie developed ways of bonding with them so you and they can relax and enjoy your time together. These bonding techniques have become the backbone of her training classes, workshops, and books. Here's Debbie. Debbie Dobson. Tell me exactly what you do.
Well, I work with dogs on what their people consider aberrant or unacceptable behavior. Many of these dogs have been adopted from shelters. And over the past 10 years, I've noticed that that's a much, much bigger trend in the United States today than it was when I was a kid.
What would you say is a primary exorbitant behavior? What would you say is a behavior that's a big issue in today's world?
I think there are several. One is jumping up to greet people. 2 is pulling when on leash. And 3 is not coming when called. Those are the 3 that I hear the most.
What are the primary methods you would use to help counter those issues?
I believe that one of the things that's really fundamentally important when people want to work with their dog in whatever capacity is that they have to have a bond with their dog. And that means a foundation of trust and love and respect. And very often, those pieces aren't there. One or more may be there. And women are very good at the love part, but they're not always so good at the respect and trust part.
Let me ask you, what would you do if I or my wife brings our dog to you because he's got a jumping issue, jumps on every, can't stop him, and you notice that just the way they brought the dog to introduce you, you know that there's really no bond there. What would you do at the beginning of the interview?
Well, usually what I do before I even interact with a dog very much is I sit down and talk with the person or the people, and we go over, describe to me what's been happening or what's not been happening. And when it happens, I would try to get as much information and detail so if I have a clear picture of what's going on. And then I would start by talking about that fundamental bond, which basically releases a dog's willingness to work with a person. Why would they? I mean, the dog's getting, 2 meals a day and, a decent place to sleep. I mean, you've got to kind of figure out a way to motivate them. And every dog has what I think of as a lock, and it's up to the person or people to figure out what the key is. What the keys are.
Will you work with I will call it a case. I work with foster kids, and we call them cases, so I'll call it a case with you. Will you work with a case or on a case that you now have assessed after a half hour of talking with them that you feel won't be good? Will you turn them down, or will you work with them anyhow?
I don't like to turn people down because I believe people have locks sometimes too. And if you can be patient enough and drill down enough to find out what's going on, a lot of times, Herb, people have beliefs about dogs that are kind of antiquated. I mean, when I was a child, for example, it was considered perfectly acceptable to roll up a newspaper and hit your dog with it.
Correct.
It was considered acceptable to If you found a puddle on the floor, you grabbed the dog and you stuck their nose in it and you yelled at them. Those were normal when I was a child, and that has since become not acceptable and not normal anymore. So I always try to take some time with the people and find out what's going on. Sometimes it's a situation where one family member or one part of the couple really wanted a dog and the other one was reluctant, and the dog can definitely sense that. Just like a child who's in foster care can sense a lot of things about adults.
What do you feel is a fair charge for training, either hourly to charge people?
Well, the first session is the longest. I stay, and I usually always go to a client's home because that's where they live and that's where the dog is exhibiting these behaviors. There may be situations where I would suggest after I talk with the people that we would go to a neutral territory, a neutral area like a park or something, but the first visit is always at the home, and I do a lot of observing. That first session runs about $100 to $120, and then I give them a list of recommendations which I would ask them to implement. That it can be anything from a harness that I particularly like. It can be, walking the dog more often. It can be, I have some herbal remedies that I can suggest to help calm dogs down, some exercises so that the dog can focus a little better. And then if everything seems to be going well, I would schedule some return visits. Usually, depending upon the situation, it could be, once or twice a week after that.
When somebody is seeking out a dog trainer, what credentials and references should people ask the prospective trainer?
I would say, I would ask things like, how many dogs have you worked with? What types of behaviors have you worked with in particular? There are many reputable organizations that certify dog trainers. There are also a lot of people out there who have called themselves dog trainers based on the number of years of personal experience that they've had. I think, I'll be honest with you, to me, the credentials are not as important as your intuitive or instinctual reaction to how the person is interacting with the dog and how the person is interacting with you.
You've been training my dog now for 1 month. And on a particular issue my dog has, he or she, what have you, just doesn't get it. What do we do?
We try something different. One of the things that any good trainer or behaviorist has is a toolbox. If method number one doesn't seem to work, and this is the thing that I have difficulty with whenever I read books by trainers. Right. They guarantee that if you do this, this will happen or that won't happen. And what I've learned over the years is that there's no one size fits all for every dog. Each dog is an individual. And if method number one doesn't work, you have to come up with method number two, or sometimes even method number three. So, you've got to have more than one way to teach a dog to sit. You've got to have more than one way to use, say, conditioning to get a dog used to thunder. You've got to be able to have a toolbox full of ideas.
How long should I expect training will take?
That is a tough question because, again, every dog is an individual.
Right.
Some dogs will respond better than others. Some dogs are more intelligent than others. But really, again, going back to what we talked about before, the key is to hopefully get the dog to a point of being willing. Once the dog is willing to listen to what you're asking, that will change everything. So again, it goes back to how do we find the right key for this dog's lock?
How do you measure success with that key?
Standard answer would be, how many repetitions do you do
Right.
of a sit-stay? I trained my dog, and for one thing, she was pretty darn good 85% of the time, but as she got older, I realized that her legs were a little stiffer. Maybe there was some arthritis in her.
Sure.
Did I worry so much about making her sit for a treat every time when she was 8 or 10 years old?
Right.
No, I did not. I cut her some slack. So, one of the things I do emphasize, though, Herb, and this is for safety, if at any time you're going to be outside with your dog off leash, one of the most important things you can never teach them is a reliable recall. That, gosh, when you think about cars, and if you're way out in the middle of nowhere, there are animals out there and
Sure.
possibly snakes, you definitely want that to be in place, no questions asked, 99% of the time. And the other important one that I emphasize, again, if the dog is off leash especially, is stay. Don't move a muscle at all. And those are things that you can, once you've established that bond with your dog, you can change the tone of your voice to let them know that there's no wiggle room here, Fido.
Right.
This is, I'll waffle a little on the sit stay, maybe, because you're getting older, but I'm not going to waffle on the come and the stay.
Which breeds do you like? Which breeds do you like to work with the best, and which breeds you don't like to work with?
I work with a lot of mixed breeds because I think that hereditarily they are the soundest. But as far as, overall, and that is not to say, please don't misunderstand me, I don't want to see breeds obliterated at all.
Right.
And a lot of people don't realize when they get a purebred dog, oftentimes what that dog was bred to do. Of all the breeds that still retain the characteristics that they were bred for, I think the herding dogs still have those up close to the surface. So if you're going to adopt a herding dog, please understand that they might have a high prey drive. They are very athletic. They need a lot of exercise. They're very intelligent. You can usually train them pretty quickly, but they need to be busy. They really do need to be busy. I really do like the herding dogs. I'm particularly fond of German Shepherds as a purebred dog. But I think, Golden Retrievers are awesome. They're sweet and loving and they're friendly. Unfortunately, Goldens have a 60% rate of cancer now because they've been such a popular breed of dog. Sure. And that breaks my heart. That really breaks my heart because they're really neat dogs. So I try to be, for example, I had a situation where I had to work with an Old English Bulldog, and I'd never worked with one before. And I have to tell you, in all honesty, I was a little apprehensive. I'd read all that stuff about how they were bred to hang on to the bull's nose, and I thought, gosh, what if this dog nips me or, goes for my hand or whatever? Well, bottom line, this dog was fine, and yes, she was really good at playing tug-of-war. My fears about her latching onto my hand were really over the top. Again, every dog is an individual. It is absolutely ridiculous to say something like all pit bulls are vicious. They are absolutely not.
Right.
One of the ways to bond, especially with a rescue dog, is to absolutely let them know that they are safe and that they are loved and they are a welcome part of your family.
Right.
That alone will help to support the bond that you have with them. That said, when I brought my own dog home, she stuck her nose in the garbage and she jumped up on the counter to see if there was anything interesting up there, and she leaped up on the sofa, and I thought, well, I feel sorry for this dog. I could tell she'd had a rough start in life. Right. And that's why people are rescuing, I think, now in so many greater numbers. But I thought, we've got to work this out.